When you're bobber trout fishing, there's nothing like yelling bobber down and fish on right away. So in today's latest trout fishing tips video, we're gonna go through the top 5 trout fishing bobbers. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks? Welcome back to the channel, where today we're talking everything trout bobbers. Now, trout fishing with bobbers has some huge advantages, especially in shallower waters, moving waters, and when you want to be more finessed to get after some very spooky trout. And on the market today, you have a ton of different bobbers that you can choose from, but what's the best bobber to use in specific scenarios and specific situations when you're fishing? Well, this is where we're going to review 5 bobbers and go through how to fish each one of these and go through what makes each bobber effective or not effective when you go out and fish with them. So let's start out with bobber number 1, which is these Addicted Fishing mustad bobbers. Now, the Addicted Fishing crew is from the Pacific Northwest, and they have some really good products. And these bobbers and micro bobbers are perfect when it comes to trout fishing. Now, these floats are made with balsa wood, which makes them easier to float, and they stand up straighter, especially in current and flowing moving waters. Now, having fished bobbers all over the place, these Addicted bobbers are great to fish in all kinds of different conditions and all kinds of bodies of water. I especially like fishing these in moving water, because when you have higher flows of water in creeks and streams, and maybe on windy days on ponds and lakes, these bobbers are going to stay up straighter in the water and help you get your presentation floated right in front of the trout in the water column. These Addicted bobbers come in 3 different colors on the tip, which are orange, volt, and pink. They're really easy to see on overcast as well as bright sunny days. And because these are slip bobbers, you can adjust the leader length between the bobber and the jig or the bait that you're fishing underneath these really easily, where you can adjust these up and down in seconds, get that bait presentation right in the perfect spot, and then get ready for a big bobber down. And with these floats having a little bit of weight behind them, they're actually really easy to cast, and you can cast these a lot farther than most floats, which makes them the perfect situation for all bodies of water. Now, the second float that we're going to talk about is your standard little plastic attached float that you can adjust on your leader line. These plastic floats have been around forever. You see these in the stores with white on top and red on the bottom. This is your standard go tried and true bobber that you fished for 100 years, whether you fished with your grandpa, your dad, your uncle, from out all the years. These are your standardized trout fishing and just pan fishing bobber. Now, the beauty of these standard bobbers is they're really easy to attach to your line, and they're really easy to use, especially as you're getting into trout fishing for the first time. That's the easiest way to get into bobber fishing for trout. And with these floats, you can slip the line through the hooks and attach these bobbers fairly easy. So as you're getting kids integrated into bobber fishing, this is a simple setup that they can use and learn how to put on their line on their own. Now, a couple downsides to these floats is they are plastic and they're not as heavy as some of the other floats. So they're a little bit harder to cast out, especially on big bodies of water. I would actually recommend these on small little ponds and small little creeks where you don't have to cast out as far and the fish are going to be a lot closer to the bank. This is where putting these floats to use is going to be your best bet to get some big trout bites. Now, when I'm fishing these, I'm typically fishing them in 10 feet or less, and most times it's typically 5 feet or less in very shallow water. But these bobbers can be very effective for bobber trout fishing. Now, next up are these tough bubble floats. Now, these are some really cool floats where you can take the middle out and fill these with water. So by adjusting and putting more water into these bobbers, you can adjust how much weight is in each one of these bobbers. So if you want to cast it out a little bit closer and have less water in here, or if you want to bomb it out a little bit farther and cast out a lot farther, you can add more water to these, which means you can change the weight on these every time you go out. Now, because these are clear plastic bobbers, I like to utilize these in one specific condition when I'm going out fishing. I especially love to fish these in the summertime in low and clear conditions when the trout can see from a long distance away. You don't want to spook them. The clarity of these bobbers helps you get the bait in front of the trout without them seeing the indicator or getting spooked. And when you're trout fishing, say with wet flies or flies that are going to be at the surface, and you want a bobber or an indicator and don't have those standard traditional fly fishing indicators, these are a great alternative alternative to use when you're out fly fishing, and also they're a great bobber to use on high mountain lakes. Because the water is so crystal clear in the summer, these clear bobbers are going to give you advantage and not be as spooky for the trout, because once you spook them, they're not coming back. So if you're looking for some new summertime tactics, especially when you're fishing clear and low water, get you some of these bubble bobbers and they're going to be great to use. Now next up for the bobbers are these weighted bobbers, and what I've got here is an 1.5 inch weighted bobber from Bass Pro Shop. Now these weighted bobbers are perfect to use when you want to keep that bait and you want to keep your gear down in the water column. That extra weight is going to keep some heavier gear in the position in the body of water that's going to get right in front of the trout in the strike zone. Now the way I like to fish these weighted bobbers is in deeper pools of water and definitely flowing water, but not super fast flowing water, because these can be tossed around in very fast flowing water. So in slower currents, these are absolutely perfect to use. Now the only downside to these weighted bobbers is sometimes, depending on the colors that you get, and I've got some bright red and some chartreuse yellow here, is sometimes in specific conditions they're really hard to see out in the water. So pay close attention to the colors that you select for these weighted bobbers, because it could be the difference between seeing your bobber go down, setting the hook and getting the bite, getting the trout into the net, versus you miss the bobber down, you miss the hook set, and you miss the trout completely. But overall, these weighted bobbers are perfect to use, and the ease of putting these onto your line is absolutely easy for kids and anybody of all ages to get into trout bobber fishing. And of course, last but not least, you've got indicator floats that you can use specifically for fly fishing. Two that I've got here are actually from the Trout Magnet kit, and they're little indicator floats. However, you can utilize these in fly fishing, using the Trout Magnet, and pretty much most kinds of baits that you can fish bobber style. Now, these indicator floats are super light in weight, so you're going to need a rod, reel, and line that allows you to cast out a lot farther to get these small little indicators and your presentation farther out there, away from the boat, away from the bank, and right in front of the trout. And tried and true, these indicators and bobbers have been used for years when it comes to fly fishing, and you can also use these for the Trout Magnet setup, which I highly recommend, especially in some light moving water. But with these small indicator floats, you can also use these on small little ponds, little lakes, little creeks and streams. You know, when you got slow moving water, these can actually be really good because they're super small, they're super finessey, and again, in clear low water, especially in the summer, these indicators are going to make it easier to be less spooky for the fish, and it's going to give you a better chance at getting those hookups. So if you want to get into bobber fly fishing or using the Trout Magnet a ton to get some big trout, use these small little indicator bobbers and they're going to help you catch them all the time. So then it comes down to ranking these different bobbers. Which one is the best for the overall, and which one's maybe at the lower spectrum that I would use the least. So my list goes this way. Number 5 being the water bobbers, and just because they're very limited, they're a little bit bulky and a little bit clunky, I have them at number 5, but they are great to use. Number 4, I have the standard plastic floats, and that's just because it's really hard to cast these out at a great distance. They have a very small limitation in which you can cast these out to, and that's really the reason why I have them at number 4, is just length of cast limitations with these bobbers. Now, number 3 are the indicator bobbers, and for any fly fisherman, anybody using the Trout Magnet, these are going to be a go-to. However, they can slip off after long usage, so you got to be careful and replace them every so often, or you're just going to flat out lose them, and that's not what you want to do. The number 2 is going to be the weighted bobbers, and just because they fish great in all kinds of different conditions, but be very careful about your color choice and being able to see them out on the water. They're great in all kinds of different conditions, all kinds of different bodies of water, and just basically a great overall all water condition bobber. And that leaves number 1 being these addicted balsa wood bobbers. And because they fish great in all kinds of different conditions, they're a good size, they're stealthy, you can fish these in rivers and big flowing water easier than any of the bobbers. This is my number 1 bobber, and you should have a few of these in your tackle box or hooked up up at all times. And there you guys have it, the top 5 trout fishing bobbers tips and review. Hope you guys got some great information today and you're excited to get some bobbers out there, cast them out, and yell bobber down and catch a nice trout. So if you liked today's video, hit the thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and as always, you guys, the outdoors is a gift, share it with others.